What is vulnerability research? Well, vulnerability research is basically discovering different vulnerabilities and different weaknesses that different applications and different systems have. Sometimes the vulnerability research will have you going out and actually looking at the bad sites, looking at the hackers. In fact, sometimes you'll go out and maybe participate in some of the hacking groups and the hacking forums just to learn more information. Basically, there's all kinds of vulnerabilities out there, and part of your job, if you're going to be an effective ethical hacker, is to make sure that you are always up to date on the latest vulnerabilities. So, why do you have to do this research? Because you need to make sure that you know what is the latest and greatest method of exploit a system. You need to know how to protect the network or the data from that latest and greatest system. You also need to make sure that you get information about security breaches and how they can be fixed and how they can be contained. You also want to make sure that you stay up to date on viruses. Knowing what viruses can do will help you defend against them. You also do this research to make sure that you do proper maintenance on your networks. Make sure that your networks and your applications are properly maintained. In addition, if you know how they have attacked or maybe how they've compromised the system, then you'll know how to repair it and hopefully recover from it. So what are some of the different vulnerability research tools you can use? Well, basically, US CERT publishes information regarding all kinds of vulnerabilities in what's called the US CERT Vulnerability Notes. Now, these are similar to alerts, but they have a little bit less information. They don't contain the solutions to all vulnerabilities, but they do contain certain vulnerabilities that meet their criteria. Now, this information is very useful for you to have as an administrator or as an ethical hacker, and these vulnerability notes can be searched on several key fields. You can search by name, vulnerability ID, or even by a file name. In other words, a common vulnerability and exposures catalog name. So, some of the different sites, you can go to www.windowsfocus.com, www.security.com, www.securitytracker.com, or even www.microsoft.com/security. And these are just a few of the websites that you can go to learn more about vulnerability research and the different vulnerabilities that are out there. So, how do people go about doing this? Basically, any security evaluation is going to have three separate components. The first component is going to be you're going to do your preparation. Basically, you're going to begin and you're going to do all the different phases, the reconnaissance and the scanning, just like a hacker would itself. Then you're actually going to conduct the evaluation itself, in which you may actually do a penetration test. You may try to actually gain access to a system. And then finally, you'll have the conclusion to yours, in which you will create a very detailed report for whoever your customer is. Maybe it's an internal or an external customer, and relay to them your findings. Just what vulnerabilities did you find, and just what information could you actually view? So, the different approaches to ethical hacking. You can take a remote network approach. This is where you actually try to get in just like a hacker would. In other words, you're not on site. You might be somewhere else, a remote location, and you try to gain access itself. You might do a remote dial-up attack in which you actually try to dial into any available modems that they may have on their system. Or you might actually try the local network attack. Find a different spot, find an empty jack in the wall, plug in and see what you can do. You could also simulate it by doing stolen equipment. And this is basically where you go and steal the information or a laptop or something like that that would allow you to have access. For instance, a lot of people when they travel, they have their laptops with them. What would happen if somebody stole a laptop? Do they have their passwords and usernames saved on the laptop? Do they have remote connections automatically configured so that all you have to do is launch the VPN client, let's say, and boom, you have automatic access to the system? Another approach is social engineering. And this is where you actually try to get information from the employees. A lot of times employees won't even realize what you're doing. And this could be something as simple as just having a casual conversation with somebody, or something like shoulder surfing or watching what they're doing. And then of course there's also the physical entry itself. And this is where you actually physically try to get in and compromise their system. See if you can get into the computer room. Can you get into the server room?